It's beautiful being back in Atlantic City. It's good meeting you, Kingsley.
When I first talked to Harvey Mason way back in the 1970s, this particular album wasn't out yet, but we start a story at the very beginning. He tells us how many albums he's recorded on, and then I start naming some of the artists. Listen.
On close to 200 albums, and I started recording in 71, so I've been moving.
Tom Jones.
Right.
Bobby Hutcherson.
Right.
Henry Mancini.
That's right.
George Shearing. Chet Baker, Gilbert O'Sullivan, Ray Charles, Grover Washington Jr., Donald Byrd, Herbie Hancock.
Well, you're right so far.
Carole King.
Yeah.
Seals and Crofts.
Right.
James Brown.
Right.
What did you do for James Brown, might we ask?
Slaughter 2.
How was it working with Soul Brother #1?
Oh, he's beautiful. He's really down to earth. He tried to get me to go on the road, you know. He didn't know me before the date. We were doing a movie, the soundtrack for the movie, and it was really happening. It was really grooving. And he came up and he said, hey man, you got to go on the road. He's a beautiful cat.
Once again, we're talking to Harvey Mason from WUSS in Atlantic City. And how did you get into studio work?
Well, I really wanted peer appreciation. I wanted other musicians to really dig what I was doing as opposed to a lot of people, because musicians really knew what was happening as far as playing goes. That's why I chose to do the studio work rather than playing in clubs, because I felt like I could really be appreciated musically as opposed to a show situation.
Who are some of the other drummers that you're really into?
Billy Cobham's happening. Steve Gadd, and Lenny White, you know, all the regular guys, Billy Hart.
So you chose studio work basically because you wanted to express yourself, but now you've released an album.
I've been on so many albums. I was approached by a number of record companies to do my own album. Probably been on more gold albums in recent years than any other drummer. The idea came up and I was approached and I decided I would do it. I could play the way I really want to play, pretty much.
What is it like being a studio musician as far as creativity and your ideas?
Well, most artists don't really know what's happening. They don't know what they really want. They have a general idea and they depend a lot on the studio musicians to pull it off. You improvise quite a bit. Mancini and people like that, and Nelson Riddle, people like that, they'll have charts. A lot of the other people may have guides and they may come in with a tape or... But other than that, they don't really know very much what they want. Actually, the studio musicians make the tunes. They write the grooves, do the whole thing for the people. So why not do it for yourself?
I can agree with that. From WUSS, I'm Kingsley Smith. We have live in the studio this morning Atlantic City's own Harvey Mason. And since you were born and raised down here, how was it like growing up?
It was an incredible place to grow up. I experienced a lot, and the clubs that were happening at the time and the music scene was incredible. I mean, there was so much music going on. Everyone that was anyone came here at some time or another, and I just happened to be lucky enough to be able to go in a lot of the places and check them out at an early age, you know.
What are some of the clubs that you played in down here?
Wonder Gardens, that's where I learned a lot. Subbed for Bill Milton at the Harlem and played the Jockey Club and the Bistro, a place that used to be Arthur's. It used to be the Hialeah. I used to work there. Got a lot of different experience there, the Steel Pier.
Who are some of the musicians of various talent that you work with?
Wonder Gardens, we had a trio. Danny Fogel, Bob Wirtz, and myself. Little organ trio. I think we were 16 at the time. We got to work there in the off hours. We'd work there, say, from 4 until 10 and 11 in the morning. Then we'd come back at 1 and play from 1 to 4, and then we'd go to another job from 10 until 4, 10 until 3, and then on the weekend, that's the way we did it. Because it was really happening here then. Worked with John Hale and Johnny D, a lot of the local guys here in town.
We're talking to Harvey Mason this morning live here at 1490, going across the WUSS album playlist, and I was just looking at some of the current albums that we're playing now that you're appearing on, and among them, Coke Escovedo is one of them.
Yeah, that was a funny album. We'll talk about that a little later, too.
Okay, Bill Withers, that's another album that Harvey is playing on. I just thought it would be interesting to point these things out. We had mentioned Coke Escovedo's album.
That was a funny album. See, Coke's from San Francisco. He started that band Azteca. I'm down in L.A. doing whatever I do, and his producer called me up and said, listen, I'm doing an album with Coke Escovedo of Mercury, and he's using his band, but I don't like the way his drummer's playing on the track, and we've already recorded it. And Coke doesn't know it, but I want you to overdub the stuff. I think this was probably the first time I'd ever done that. So he brought the album down, brought the tape down. We went in the studio and we listened to it. He asked me if it was possible for me to do it. The tempos all went up. It got faster and slower all throughout the tracks, and there were all kinds of funny breaks in it. They didn't have any music. I made an attempt at overdubbing the entire album, and that's what it ended up that I did. I didn't think the album was going to turn out to do anything at all. And the next thing I knew that it was playing, and it was on a lot of playlists, and it was happening, and I overdubbed the entire album.
That's really an amazing story. How much of the work that you do is live with the other musicians that you're playing with, and how much is overdub? What's the percentage?
Rhythm tracks is the way that most albums are cut. So we'll use pianos, guitars, bass, and drums, and possibly percussion. And we'll go in and do it with that, and then they'll overdub all the strings and horns and things like that. Except on a few albums, like Morcia Santos albums. He's a great Brazilian writer. He does a lot of his things live, and I did Barbra Streisand this past year. All her stuff was live also, that Lazy Afternoon album.
So in other words, normally now, recording nowadays, it's all overdub and it's hardly live.
A lot of the strings and the sweetening, as they call it, is overdubbed, but the rhythm tracks are done live.
Harvey Mason this morning on WUSS in Atlantic City. We're going to feature now something off Harvey's album, Marching in the Streets. I had mentioned earlier I was going to tell you my favorite song on the Marching in the Streets album. It is pronounced Modaji.
Exactly.
On this tune, it's featuring Harvey on drums, Chuck Rainey on bass, Dave Grusin, he's on electric keyboards, and Hubert Laws is on flute. We're going to play that for you now.
Dave Grusin is an incredible film writer who recently did 3 Days of Condor. I did that with him. He's also done The Graduate, and he did the theme to Beretta. He's a good friend of mine. We work together in a club in L.A. every Tuesday night in a Kicks band. We get together and play, and he's just a great writer, and he wrote this song for my album.
You had mentioned that you currently just got back from New York. You were working with somebody.
I was doing Bob James with Grover Washington. We're doing Bob's album, Bob James 3. And then I spent one day doing Ronnie Foster's album with Stevie Wonder producing.
You played on Mr. Magic, incidentally.
Right.
For our
that was a
listeners.
gold album also.
Okay, so once again, we're going to play another cut from Harvey's album as a leader. I don't know, a lot of jazz announcers say that. I don't know why they say that. I guess it's true.
Well,
anyway.
probably because I've been on so many other albums. I'm on close to 200 albums. And I started recording in 71. So I've been moving.
That's an excellent track record. Harvey Mason from WUSS. 1490 WUSS. Harvey Mason from his album Marching in the Streets with Modaji. What's the story behind that?
I wouldn't begin to try and decipher that. That's Dave Grusin's title. And it has something to do with a woman.
Okay, I guess we'll leave that to the imaginations of the listeners. Give us a call, 344-WUSS. Also, if you'd like to talk to Harvey Mason, Harvey's going to be appearing live this afternoon at Zodiac Records in the Pleasantville Shopping Center signing autographs. You're a very diverse individual, and I was noticing that you've done some film work. What films?
The Most Deadly Game with George Maharis and Yvette Mimieux.
Wrote the music for that? Or
no, I was
just playing?
I was acting in it.
You're an actor.
Well, I just happened to act in that particular... just recently, a week or so ago, I got called by Warner Brothers to be in The Star is Born with Barbra Streisand and Chris Christopherson. And then I left, and I had to part for a week. They called my name and said they decided to use Chris Christopherson's bands. But I thought I was going to be a movie star for a minute.
Didn't luck out in that one.
No, but I meant That's the Way of the World with Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Are you acting in that?
Yeah, I'm acting and I'm playing. Actually, see, I played percussion on Earth, Wind, and Fire's record. I played timpani, vibes, and bells and all that stuff. The movie's about a band that makes it and how they get their recording contract and how their record is made. They filmed the record dates, and percussion may be put on with the rhythm tracks, or they may overdub it later. I was overdubbed later, and the filming crew was there, and they just filmed it as it went along, and they just used it all throughout the whole picture.
What's your impressions of Earth, Wind, and Fire?
They're really musical, and they're really visual, and they've just got the whole thing covered.
We're going to feature next something that Harvey has written. 1490 WUSS. Harvey Mason on drums, playing on Donald Byrd's album, Stepping Into Tomorrow. Harvey's composition of Making It. And Harvey, what can you tell us about Donald Byrd?
He's fun to work with. He came to some of his rhythm dates. So, as opposed to Bobby Humphrey, he was at some of the dates. He has a couple planes, and he lives in L.A. in Hollywood Hills, and he's really living life good now. The whole industry is transcending. Music is transcending. It's all getting closer and closer together. Everything. Herbie Hancock and Stevie Wonder are hanging out, and they're completely from two different environments supposedly, and everything's coming together.
Harvey's new release is entitled "Marching in the Streets." I was talking to Harvey, and we were asking him what is his favorite selection from the LP "Marching in the Streets," and you said you really couldn't decide. We did pick one to close the show out, though, and that was Ballad for Heather. What can you tell us about that?
That's written for my little girl, Heather. She's beautiful, and I think the song is beautiful. It features Herbie Hancock on electric piano, Dave Grusin on acoustic piano, and a friend of mine, Jerry Peters, who wrote Going in Circles and Lover Let Me Be Lonely, a lot of hits for the French Distinction he's playing. And the melody's played by Frank Rosalino, and this was a first take. The first time they sat down and played it and I turned the machine on, that was it. It has that magic.
Is there anything that you like to say that we haven't touched on to the South Jersey listening audience?
Good to be here, and it's good to be from here.
If you weren't involved in a drumming career, what do you think that you would be doing at this point in your life?
I don't know. I taught for 6 months. I taught school. I have a bachelor's in music education, just when I first went out to L.A. I don't know if I'd be doing that or not. It's hard to say. I don't know what I would do.
Harvey Mason from WUSS. Harvey, thanks for stopping by this morning. Really appreciate it. Hope you can come back again.
I hope so.
Say hi to your mother.
I sure will, King. Later, man.